Okay, so we're back with the review for the second episode of Percy Jackson that was released alongside episode 1, titled I Become Supreme Lord of the Bathroom. And this episode pretty much chronicles Percy's time in Camp Half-Blood, which was a really hotly anticipated element of the show that the fans were hyped up for. And so yeah, enough preamble. Let's just jump into the episode, shall we? And as just another reminder, spoilers ahead. I mean, book spoilers. I've read the books, and we're likely going to be discussing future plot points, so be warned. Anyway, we start off the episode with Percy resting after his ordeal and briefly waking back up to see Annabeth creepily staring at him whilst he's sleeping. And with her also trash-talking him about drooling in his sleep, which I feel like is a little unfair because the dude was passed out from exhaustion and stress after fighting the Minotaur and seeing his mum die. And she just there trash-talking him? Nah. Truly a grand romance in the making. Anyway, Percy wakes up, I assume, the next day, with Grover sitting by his bedside, congratulating him on the defeat of the Minotaur, and offering his condolences and apologies for the death of Sally, and also for not living up to the standard that was expected of a guardian. And yeah, Percy's not having any of that. And fair enough, dude got lied to hard, and sees his mother supposedly killed, and then he's needing to deal with Grover's self-pity party. I think I'd be a bit annoyed as well if I'm being honest. Like, yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and obviously they're going to reconcile as Grover's a key character, but you definitely want to see him earn it, after seeing everything that Percy's gone through. So Percy heads outside, and here he meets Dionysus, who, in quite a funny scene, trolls Percy, continually getting his name wrong, whilst also pretending to be his father in an attempt to get him to bring him some wine. Because of course, Zeus has banned him from drinking whilst at camp. Since he's caring for children, I think that's fair enough. And yeah, this is also a very mean thing to do, but it did give me a bit of a laugh. I much preferred this introduction to his character than what we get in the book, where he kind of just threatens Percy when Percy questions whether he's actually a god or not. This, I feel like, more encapsulates who the character actually is, and also just lightens the mood a bit. After all, the show has been very heavy in emotion up to this point, much heavier than the book was, so you gotta have some comic relief. Also, I really like the guy they got to play him. He very much suits the character and brings him to life, but yeah. Chiron arrives, he scolds Mr. D, and then Percy's off to explore camp and whatnot whilst Grover gets left behind. And then we finally get a look at the camp, and I gotta say, I love the way they brought it to life. It's not quite what I had in my head, but it still looks really awesome to me. Sort of reminds me of the war camp in The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. And I think that's a pretty favourable comparison. I love the way in which they filled the background locations with half-bloods doing different things. Reminds me of the early Harry Potter films where it felt like the world was a living, breathing thing with students doing random, normal student stuff in the background. I feel like they really got that part down correctly, and it makes the world feel more alive as a result. Anyway, Percy, being a good kid, tries to apologise to Chiron about losing the pen sword, only to discover it teleported back inside his pocket because, as Chiron puts it, magical objects do not obey the laws of the physical world. And this is really just a funny little throwaway line that also informs the audience that the show can just pull anything out of its ass whenever it wants and brush it off as simply being caused by magic. And I can tell that at times that is going to get a bit annoying, at least for me. But at the same time, at least they're being upfront about it now, rather than springing that sort of explanation on you after a key plot point's resolved through the use of magic. Also, I gotta say, I love the dude playing Chiron. Just perfect for the part. Really big time Richard Harris Dumbledore vibes. And I think that's what you need for a show like this. A wholesome character who drops in and out to provide wisdom and guidance and just happiness. Hard-ass mentors, they're fun sometimes, but they're a dime a dozen. Mentors like this, they feel special. We continue on with Chiron showing Percy the cabins of the 12 Olympians where their demigod children live, with Percy getting crammed into the Hermes cabin because that's where all the extras who haven't been claimed are kept. What a lovely system. Also, I feel like it's a bit of a dick move on the part of Poseidon to just not claim him at all. I mean, I assume that everybody who's relevant, Chiron, Mr. D, everybody on Mount Olympus, they know who he is. So why not cut him a break and just let him know who his father is? I mean, I'd forgotten how hateable the Olympians are in the book series, to be honest. I mean, I know they mostly seem to get away with everything, but if they're going to make any changes, I'd really increase the number of times the gods get extremely humbled. That would make me smile. Like, I wonder how many kids actually live in the Hermes cabin and have never been claimed by their parents, not even Hermes kids. That would suck. Let's be real. Like, I hate the gods in this franchise. They're legitimately terrible people. But anyway, he gets put into the cabin, he gets a heartfelt but ultimately meaningless pep talk from Chiron, before meeting Luke and the rest of the Hermes cabin. And look, I feel like for the true twist villain of the season, they've cast one of the shiftiest possible dudes to play him ever. Seriously, I was watching with somebody who knew next to nothing about anything to do with the franchise, and they instantly said, oh, this dude's a villain, right? I mean, maybe they're just a very good predictor of twist villains, but I feel like the more likely answer is that even to a casual audience, this dude is sus. Although maybe the creators knew this at the time, because they present him as the type of character that Percy thinks is going to be a bully, only for him to be really nice, so maybe they hope that's going to be enough to throw people off the scent. Only time will tell, I guess. We then get some show original content, there to flesh out the world a little bit more. Grover goes off to meet the Council of Cloven Elders and meets a wood nymph, Helena. along the way. Originally, I was a bit worried that this was supposed to be the character that becomes his girlfriend, which would be very yuck. I don't have the actress's IMDb handy, but I'd guess she's a fair bit older. It would just be very odd. Anyway, a bit of a throwaway scene that doesn't really serve much purpose other than to set up future events for the franchise. Before we cut over to a little scene with Grover, Dionysus, and Chiron, which, well, it was fun to see Chiron and Dionysus chilling and having fun playing cards. Pretty sure Chiron's his uncle if you dive into the family trees. So the way they were interacting here, I found it amusing. But of course, Grover comes in to give us a bit of plot relevant info to push things along that he learned at the Cloven Council, namely that he's pretty sure that instead of straight up dying, Sally was, at the moment she was about to die, spirited away to the underworld by Hades. And of course, both of them already knew this to begin with, but they don't want him to tell Percy because the situation's very volatile. So he pretty much gets told to shut up and sit down. And yes, this was a very important scene, as the casuals get that confirmation that Sally is alive, and we also set up two big plot points. The tension between the gods and the volatile situation on Mount Olympus, and Hades being the big boogeyman villain lurking in the shadows to ramp up the tension, providing Percy with a concrete enemy to fight against for this part of the season, even if it does end up being a big misdirect twist sort of thing. Percy then has, I guess, another Kronos-infused nightmare. Lovely. Just remind the audience that something bigger is at work here, although at the same time, it sort of hints at it being Hades if you don't know the larger story at work, as they had just had that scene of Grover and Mr. D, etc., talking about how Hades has snatched Sally away, and they shouldn't tell Percy, only for this dude to be telling Percy about how something important's been taken from him. Percy then wakes from a nightmare, and the show continues trying to make Luke seem not like an obvious villain by having him and Percy bond and talk about how the gods are deadbeats, etc., etc. And this makes Percy feel like he belongs here, that they're all on the same team, and they have similar struggles. But of course, you can't have him get too comfy, and you need a minor antagonist for Percy to contend with as well. A more human character for him to deal with, just to spice up the episode. Because if everybody was just happy and smiling and all, there'd be no tension, no drama, and it would be very boring. And so enter Clarice, a daughter of Ares, and Percy's new bully. Because no matter where this kid goes, he can't escape the bullies. But this time, it seems instead of thinking he's a weirdo or a loser, she just thinks he's a liar, a poser. He has credit for killing a Minotaur, something the majority of the camp would probably want. As for them, glory, as Luke says, is everything. That's what's the most important thing to a demigod. It's what makes them who they are, that desire for greatness. And so that really ramps up this new tension between Percy and Clarice and forms the crux of the dramatic arc of this episode. And of course, now Percy also wants that glory because it means his deadbeat dad would have no choice but to claim him. And so here, we get a compilation of Percy trying to prove himself and failing. He fails at archery, very hard, and then he fails at smithing, very hard. Like, he sets the forge on fire levels of bad. And I really liked this sequence because it sets Percy up as having weaknesses. In the book, it feels like the dude has so much early success, which on screen would translate into him feeling like a bit of a Gary Stew. Good at everything, always wins, has a super rare godly parent. But here, this shifts that perspective early on and ensures the audience can see that he's not perfect, even if they do kind of wipe that away later on in the episode. But they do try their best to make him seem like he has flaws. They even have a pretty funny little scene where he's all sad that he sucks, and he ponders whether he's the secret child of the god of disappointment, prompting Luke to give him yet another pep talk. One of his favourite things, it seems. And of course, they're further trying to hide that twist villain under the wholesome older brother exterior. We then get a little bit of exposition about how when you pray to a Greek god, you burn something you're going to miss the most to ensure you get their attention. And so we get a really wholesome and emotional scene where Percy burns his blue candy and tries to speak not to his father, but to his supposedly dead mother instead, which I thought was very cute, very sad. And I was also amused with my imaginary image of Poseidon just awkwardly sitting in Olympus whilst this is going down, not really knowing what to do. Seriously, the more this goes on, the more I realize what a piece of garbage this dude is. The book relationship between the two is really, really positive, but that's the book, and the book doesn't always have the best character development. Seeing it play out on screen really makes Poseidon seem very, very bad. If they have to make one change that I think is absolutely needed, it's for Percy to be cold to his dad for a fair while, like most of the show. Maybe that's just me. We then get part 2 of the Percy versus the bullies arc, where they're still pretty jealous of him killing the Minotaur and try to bully him into recanting his story, making him look like a liar to big himself up, even though the dude literally has a Minotaur horn in his room as a trophy, but sure. Anyway, since this is America, they try to give him a swirly. Is this an actual thing that happens in real life? Because I've never actually heard of it happening to anyone or seen it happen, ever. And it's certainly never been done to me, but it feels like every teen drama has this happen to somebody at some point in time. But yeah, that toilet looks nasty. Some suspicious stains there on the bottom. And so when those bullies end up getting soaked, it is very disgusting. I mean, I'd need a shower for hours, and I'm pretty sure there are remnants of poo in that toilet. And even if there's not, nobody wants to get splashed by communal toilet water. Ugh. Also, the water forms a nice little trident prong as it blasts out of the toilet to hit the bullies, so there's a lot of build up to that eventual parent reveal in the episode as well. Honestly, in terms of structure, I do feel like this episode was laid out really well. It has many storylines that all get introduced and built to throughout the episode, and eventually culminate in a series of climaxes as you go along, whilst also setting up for future events for future episodes. Really strong writing here overall. We also get a brief look at our main romantic pairing of the saga, Percy and Annabeth, who finally gets a bit more significant screen time in this scene, where, I don't know, she kind of just creeps Percy out by admitting she's stalking him. Very romantic. Who doesn't love to be told somebody's been following them around, waiting to see if they get beaten up by bullies and how they're going to respond, just because she wants them on their team for Capture the Flag. Anyway, we move on to see Luke give Percy a bit of exposition about a character called Thalia. Is it really pronounced like that? I'm so certain that name is supposed to be pronounced Talia. Why are they saying Thalia? But anyway, she was the daughter of Zeus that used to travel with him and Annabeth, but had been killed in the past. And now she's not really relevant, because after all, she is dead. She'll come back at some point in the future, but right now it's just a name drop. But the important thing from this scene to take away is that she was sired by Zeus, and children sired by Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades are considered especially powerful, and thus they always seem to cause more chaos and destruction wherever they crop up. Because of this, the big three decided they wouldn't have any more children, or demigod children at least, in order to prevent those associated risks. And of course, this is just yet another clever little way to set things up for the big Percy reveal at the end of the episode, to make the audience understand how significant Percy is in the grand scheme of things. Also, based on right now and how he's speaking about her, it feels like Luke and Annabeth have a more sibling bond based on how he's talking. And I really hope they don't do the weird Luke has a crush on Annabeth storyline right at the end, because with these two actors and how much older he looks than her, it feels icky. I mean, in the book, it was already very icky when you read it, so here's hoping they change things up going forward. I'm not sure what Rick was thinking with that one, to be honest. Why would you make him a pedo at the last minute? Yuck. So yeah, Annabeth's also getting set up as the obvious third member of the adventure team alongside Grover and Percy. Just through the dialogue, that's clear. You make it obvious to the casual audience that she's going to be set up as a key character in the storyline. And so yeah, like I said before, more and more the writing and pacing for this episode are really well done. I think it's far superior to episode 1 in that regard. And then finally we get into the Capture the Flag match, which, well, it starts off pretty cool. A bit lame seeing all these kids and teens behaving like this is an actual war, squad move out and all that kind of thing, or whatever Luke's saying. But still, the tone of it was cool at first. We don't actually get to see what the blue team's plan is. To me, overall, it seems like their plan was simply Luke whoops ass whilst Percy acts as bait, because Clarice is probably their strongest player and she's out for blood. And also it lets Annabeth see what Percy can truly do. I just guess that Luke is that good that he doesn't need the extra help. Jeez, what a Chad. If only he wasn't a bad guy. And speaking of which, when they do the villain reveal at the end of this season, I really hope they don't have him go full serial killer like they do in the books and films. I feel like he should be way more conflicted about betraying his family, but feeling like it's all for the best. But maybe that's just me. Regardless, we get a bit more of Percy and Annabeth, where she trolls him by telling him nothing and then using her invisibility hat to hide and observe, leaving Percy alone for ages to just chill in the forest. Really hope she turned away when he took a piss though. That would be an awkward realization that she was still there for that. Also, luckily Clarice didn't turn up whilst he was doing that either, because I can't imagine that would have ended well for him at all, especially with the fire spear. Oof. And I gotta say, I really wish we'd seen the actual Capture the Flag battle. Like, come on, they skip right into the thick of it, they show me a couple sword swings, and then it's over. Nah, I needed more from this. Cut the ending with Percy finding out about his mum, extend the fight out, and then end things with the Poseidon reveal. That's how I would have liked to see it play out. Instead, they weirdly cut to halfway through the battle sequence, and they have a few action shots of Luke, and that's it. It's a bit disappointing, honestly. Also, Percy doing the floss dance. Ugh. Missed the mark on that reference by a couple of years at least. Typical Hollywood, really. And then there's the big showdown with Percy versus the Ares cabin. And yeah, Percy is way too strong and too skilled with a sword for a complete novice. He should be getting minced, but he's easily dodging, he's deflecting shots, he's doing flips. Yeah, not believable, sorry. Especially when fighting the children of Ares, god of war, 3-on-1. Like, yes, he takes some cuts and he gets knocked off a cliff or whatever, but he's still way too competent at what he's doing, especially since he manages to get the upper hand at times and even breaks the spear. He brings them to a stalemate. Nah, like the choreography was good and all, but it wasn't tying into the story being told that he's a novice, a newbie, and they're picking on him. Like, what? He's been here for a day or so. Get real. I don't care if he's supposed to have some grand natural ability. The three of them are children of Ares. they should also have so much more training and the natural ability to go with it. So it's baffling to me that he is able to hold his ground completely and utterly, and even break the spear. Anyway, after the battle is over, Annabeth reveals that she was there the whole time and just didn't help, because she's so nice, before pushing him into the lake to heal his wounds, and revealing he's a son of Poseidon, in a pretty epic moment that should have been the end of the episode, and you'll never convince me otherwise. But for some reason they continued on, and we get to that final scene with Chiron, Mr. D, Percy, and Grover, where it's revealed that for some reason, everybody thinks that Percy is somehow stolen from Zeus, and it could cause a war as a result. Thus, he needs to go to the underworld to set things right with Hades, with Grover revealing that his mother is also still there, directly disobeying a godly directive to restore their friendship and also convince Percy to go. Yeah, it was a cool moment, but I still think it should have been at the start of the next episode so you can go into the next big plot points. The big Poseidon reveal, with that prior knowledge that children of the big three are taboo, would have been a far stronger finish in my eyes. Seeing that trident and then they cut to black, it felt like the end, but then they kept going. And so, in the end, it was a good episode that fell off at the end with the kind of underwhelming battle scene and then the drawn-out finish. But yeah, still a really good episode that was well structured for the most part. It was engaging, funny, exciting. And so, yeah, with all that being said, that's the end of the video. And so I'll just remind you that these have been my opinions, and now I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of the second episode? Did you like it, hate it? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.